Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Avodah Zara, Daf Zayin. We'll be spending the first Amud of the day speaking about some fascinating halachos of bris milah. In the world of psak, there's a lot of clarity, but we're starting shiur now. If you guys want to, in the world of psak, this Gemara would be one of our primary Mari Makomos. We don't paskin like the Shitas in this Gemara. This is a fascinating sugya. We're starting 2/3 of the way down on Chav Vav and Beis at the words Tanu Rabbanon. Tanu Rabbanon. Yisrael mal es ha'oved kochavim l'shum ger. A Yisrael, a Yid, is allowed to do a bris for an oved kochavim if it's l'shem gerus la'afuke lishum murna delo. However, if a Yid is giving a bris for an oved kochavim because of murna, that is not allowed. What's murna? Rashi, a little bit more than halfway down. Dibra maschel la'afuke lishum tola'as sheyesh be'orlaso. Ew. Some type of worm. I have done a lot of brisim. I've never seen worms. I don't know what that means. I don't know what disorder it is. I have no idea. So there, the Gemara says delo. And this Rashi that we're about to read, the Shach picks up on in Yoredeh. Rashi over here says delo. De asr leraposo bechinam. You're not allowed to heal a goy, an oved kochavim, for free. To amran lo ma'alin v'lo meridin. The Mishnah says that if a baby is sick, you have to leave them as is. In this case, of the akum, you have to leave them as is. So the Rama in Shulchan Aruch writes that a Yid should not do a bris for a goy. And then the Shach adds this knech. When is that true? That's if it's bechinam. But if it's not bechinam, that's mutter. So that is where the broad heter to do brisim comes from. I spoke to Rabbi first. He's like, you can do it, but I'm not doing it, he said, because he's like, I'm dying. It's like, not shaykh. That should, I hear loud and clear. And then I once called Rav Hershel Schechter about something. While I had him on the phone, I asked him an unrelated bris milah shaila. He's like, why would you do a bris for a goy? I'm like, I just want to be clear. I didn't ask this shaila. I wasn't asking. I have psukim from my Rabbanim based on this shach, based on this Gemara taka right here. But a fascinating brisa nevertheless, that when it comes to an oved kochavim, it's mutter l'shem gerus. And I don't charge more, I'm just makbid. You can't charge more because
What would they?
because they have a Jewish friend who used me. It's too small of a neighborhood. It's I would never do that. It doesn't feel right to me anyways. Yeah, it's too small. And all the goyim work at the same firms as the Jews, and I'm likely to be the moel for some of them. So anyways, that's the first part of the brisa. The oved kochavim lo yimol Yisrael. A non-Jew, an oved kochavim, is not allowed to do a circumcision for a Jew. Why? Not because it's puzzle, but mipnei shechshudin al shvichus dam. We're afraid that the oved kochavim will use this as an opportunity to be shofech damim divrei Reb Meir. The chachamim omrim, I disagree. Oved kochavim malis Yisrael bizman shecherem omden al gaba. We'll soon see a discussion that as long as the orla is removed, you are yotze. It's a fascinating sugya. How could it be that a goy is able to do this on behalf of a yid? After all, the goy is not chayiv in mitzvos. Okay, but anyways, the Chachamim say that bisman shachem omden al gabo, that an oved kochavim is allowed to do a bris. Aval beino leveino, if it's private, if you have just the baby who's a Jew and the moel who's an oved kochavim, lo, that's not allowed. Then we're concerned about, then we are concerned about the killing issue. Now, this is why we don't make a bracha on a tafas tam bris. Never in halacha do we make a bracha on a tafas tam bris. I was in the OR at Lurie's like 3 or 4 years ago. The baby had a diagnosis called epispadias. The whole guns, everything needed to be repaired. Bladder repair, peanut. I mean, A to Z. He didn't look like a boy when he started. Looked perfect when he was done. I mean, like momish, like artwork. Now, while I was there, my job is to do any kindergartner can do this cut. Like the surgeons hold us up, they say, Rabbi, don't cut my fingers. My role is very easy. The problem is that with this baby, the only thing that was going to be removed was like a smidgen of a smidgen of a smidgen, because they needed all that skin that was there for repair work. So I called her by first, like literally standing there in the OR, pretending like I'm a doctor. I'm like, hello, Rebbe. I said, what am I supposed to do? Am I making a bracha on this? It's mam shatafas bris. Like they would prefer I remove nothing. So he said, you don't make a bracha in this case. So it was fascinating. Okay, so why?
Later, you do it.
No, there's no brachas at all. Whenever you do hatafas, this was the equivalent of hatafas bris. All cases of hatafas bris have no brachas because as long as you're gemalt, you're done. Okay, so that is the shita of the Chacham. V'Rav Meir Omer afilu acherem omdin al gabo. We're on the first of the long lines on Chavavim and Beis. Even by the goy, by the Oved Kochavim who's doing a bris for the Israel, even if people are watching over you, no, the zimnin demasle sakinu mashv like Rishavcha. Then maybe he'll have a knife and maybe he can do some type of cut that will make it so that the baby will be a krushavcha, that he won't be able to have children. I don't know if this is a vasectomy. The tubes that carry the Zara, like in that space, they're all very close by. You'd have to mamish be a pikech to know what you're doing. I can't imagine they knew exactly how to do vasectomy. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Just make the able shorter, it doesn't shoot out enough. That's enough.
Lo yodea.
But,
Doesn't sound right scientifically, but I don't know what he's talking about. That's what the Gemara says. That's what Rashi has. Rashi says 12 lines from the bottom. Mishenichras lo min hagid min ha'atara ulamala letzad haguf v'shuv eno malid. Someone who cuts mishenichras lo min hagid from the anatomy itself, min ha'atara ulamala from the crown and up. Seemingly, if they remove the atara, that's what it sounds like. Letzad haguf. I don't know what those words mean. Downward. No, downward. Toward the body.
Right, so the penis hangs down and then upwards.
It's toward the body, whichever. Yeah, we're talking about just. I'm imagining a baby on his back during a bris, like regular. So we're concerned that he'll seemingly. This language is super complex. Like I don't know why it was written this way, which means that it needs time. I don't know exactly what it means. Whatever the case may be, it's not a vasectomy. We're talking about, like what Joe was saying, you're cutting the anatomy itself in such a way. Okay, we're never going to finish this daf if we keep talking Torah like this. Let us. Okay, so then the Gemara says, why is Rav Meir makbid? Because of Krushavcha. The Savar of Meir asks the Gemara, the Savar of Meir, Oved Kochavim lo. Are we assuming, asks the Gemara, that an Oved Kochavim is never allowed to do this for a Jew? Is that in fact the case? Savar Rav Meir, right. After all, Rav Meir himself agreed that there are cases where we do allow for an Oved Kochavim to do a bris or minhu. Here's a brisa for you. This brisa can be found in Menachos. Ir she'ein ba rofe Yisrael. A person lives in a city, they live in the boondocks, there's no rofe Yisrael. In this case, that's the equivalent, as Rashi says, sheyodea lamu. We're talking about someone who knows how to do a bris. V'yesh ba rofe kusi v'rofe oved kochavim. We know about the kusim who were complex gerim, geri arioshem. They converted out of fear. And we have ovdei kochavim. So which one's better? Yimol oved kochavim ve'al yimol kusi David Rav Meir. We already have our question. Because a minute ago, Rav Meir said, I don't care what the circumstances are, that an akum is not allowed to do a bris. Here we see that if you're choosing between an akum and a kusi, the akum should do it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yimal Kusi V'al Yimal Oved Kochav. We're not going to get into the lamdas of each of their shitas, but the point is that we do see that Rav Meir is soser himself. That when it comes to the brisa that we started with today, he said in regards to an akum afilu acherem omden al gabo namilo. Yet in this brisa he says Yimal Oved Kochavim V'al Yimal Kusi. So says the Gemara, Epuch, we should switch the shitas. Rav Meir really Omer, he says Yimal Kusi V'lo Oved Kochavim, and that keeps him in line with his other shita that an Oved Kochavim is never allowed to do a bris. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Oved Kochavim lo kusi, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that way. Says the Gemara, that can't be either. Your epoch doesn't work, because that then means that Rabbi Yehuda holds that an Oved Kochavim is allowed to do a bris under certain circumstances. V'sav Rabbi Yehuda Oved Kochavim shapir dami. Would we ever say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that that's allowed? Vatanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer minayin lamila Oved Kochavim shipsulam. Well, that doesn't work. You can't say epoch to make Rav Meir work, and then be left with a stira within the other Baal Shita. That doesn't make any sense. But how do we know, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that a milah done by an oved kochavim is psula? So the Gemara says, last line of Chavavim Abesh Amar Be'ata es berisisi shmor. You, Avraham, you need to keep the bris. You, Avraham, are a yid, meaning those who do brisim have to be yidden. And I'll just add from yesterday's conversations, they have to be erlich yidden. You can't be a mumar. If you're a mumar, your bris is not kosher. I mean, again, a tafas not bris notwithstanding, we don't make a bracha in that case because there's an aspect of suffix. But if the moel is mechal Shabbos, if the moel wears shatnez, if the moel is not whatever, doesn't keep kosher, the bris doesn't count. We'll see today's sheet is about women doing bris milah, and you'll ask from Sipora. That's going to be part of today's conversation also. So, according to Rabbi Yehuda himself was of the opinion that an oved kochavim was puzzled for milah because of the pasuk of V'atas Brisi Sishmor. So when we said epoch to switch the shita so that Rav Meir is consistent in that he holds that an oved kochavim is never allowed to do a bris, that implies Rabbi Yehuda holds that you are, but that's not true. Rabbi Yehuda says that they're puzzled. Ela la'olam lo tepoch. Really, we shouldn't switch the shitas around. And what are we dealing with when we say that even Reb Meir would allow? Remember our brisa that we started with today. Reb Meir said, "No way, not happening. An oved kochavim can't do it." Then we said, or minhu, we saw that Reb Meir says that he is allowed. How is it that we could say lo tepoch that really Reb Meir holds? We don't switch the brisa. Reb Meir holds that sometimes it is allowed with an akum. Here we learn a very, very, very important halachic principle. Lo lo tepoch. On top of chav zayin and aleph, the rofe mumche. That if the oved kochavim is a mumche, we're not worried that he's going to kill. Why? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, it's not worth it for him to ruin his reputation and his business to kill the one yid. It's not worth it for him. This is a principle that we find in Hilchos Kashrus all the time called uman lo mare umnase. That an uman, someone who's a professional, someone who's an expert, will not ruin their business just because of any one person. His business is too important for him. That's why even though there's no ne'emanus by a guy, but if I call, and I did, if I call Nabisco and say, is there any milk in those cookies at all if I'm allergic? Uman lo mare umnase. Why can we rely on them? They have no ne'emanus. They're a guy. They have nothing going for them in regards to ne'emanus. So the Maisa, uman lo mare umnase. What's that?
Nurses.
That's a similar principle, but I mean, that's how it's spoken. This is the language that it's spoken.
He do something. He works for you, but that's not what it's there. Well, I mean, right? Just because the guy can make phone call doesn't mean.
What do you mean, Mirsas? What were you saying?
Mirsas is that your cleaning lady probably is not going to go through your refrigerator and flip everything out because there's a fear of the job.
So I'm saying here also that he's
Why is that different than Uman? It is different.
Because more.
It's a different svara. It's a different svara.
First of all, given that you're buying cookies, you're kind of their boss.
I'm not sure how much more personal you can get into giving someone a bris milah. If the only community here, the more or less personal.
Considering my awkward relationships in this show with everyone under the age of 14, I totally understand what you're saying.
They don't remember, and they
No, Baruch Hashem. True. No, but there is a difference in the svara because the Uman Umarim Nase happens to apply by bris milah, but it also applies to Nabisco and it also applies to Target and it applies everywhere. The application is broader, but Mirsas is I need a personal connection to you. There is a difference. I hear the distinction. I thought when you said Mirsas, it was just some fear of retribution. Right. What's that?
I think this one is more like about the reputation versus.
For sure, that's what's happening.
Mirsas is more like
losing the job.
Yeah.
Which is what the Gemara said.
Right. So that's.
But that's what the Gemara. That's what
It's more about
Rashi's
getting
essentially
jobs
saying
in
here.
the future.
Yeah, we're never going to finish the daf.
We're definitely not going to finish the daf.
Sorry,
I'm okay with that. It's a bris milah sugya. No, we were racing to the end. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so that's what the Gemara says, that if it's mumchel rabbim. So we had said there's a stira in Rav Meir. In the first brisa, Rav Meir said, no way, no how, no beit kochavim can't do a bris. In the second brisa, the one from Menachos, it seems to say that he preferred the Oved Kochavim over the Kusi. How can that be? Says the Gemara, because he's a Rofe Mumche. And a Rofe Mumche is Lo Mora Nafshe L'Shavik Krushavcha. It's not worth it for him. Says the Gemara, because, and this was how it plays out, V'sava Reb Yehuda Kusi Shapir Dami. Now, if it's true that Rav Meir that we just learned about said that the Oved Kochavim should do it over a Kusi, that means that Reb Yehuda was the other Shita. He must hold that a Kusi is better. But how can you say that, Vatanya? Yisrael mal es akusi, and Yisrael can do a bris for a kusi. Ve'akusi lo yimol Yisrael mipnei shemal l'shem har gerizim dibur Reb Yehuda. They some kind of Avodah Zara-esque type of thing, something at har gerizim. There was a dove there, some type of Avodah Zara. Okay, so therefore we see already black on white dibur Reb Yehuda. The Reb Yehuda doesn't trust kusim, so that's a stira too. And this is the second time it happened in 10 lines, which is that we said, now we'll switch things up to make Rav Meir fit. Yeah, now Rabbi Yehuda doesn't fit. So we'll have to figure this out. We didn't finish the brisa yet. Amar lo Rabbi Yossi, and just think and learning for just a minute as you read this line. That's a crazy line. Where do we see that Mila on a Torah level needs to be Lishma? We paskin Ladina that a Mila Shalom Lishma is kosher mamash. This happened to me. I did a circumcision for a religious Christian family. And after the circumcision, the woman said to me, "Oh, did I neglect to tell you that my mother grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home?" This happened to me in Wisconsin, in Sharon, Wisconsin. Population, this family. Like it was a very small community. I think there were like 40, they were homes, but they were like the size of mobile homes, tiny, tiny, tiny homes. Knocked on the door. Yoshka's pasha bleeding on the wall. Psukim from the Philippians. I don't know, the whole guns, everything they had on the couldn't have been more Catholic. And they dress a certain way. I've got it down. I know this chevra. I did this. No talis, nothing. And then after she's like, "Yeah, my mom grew up in so and so community. She grew up in a shul." I'm like, "Did you just say shul?" So I called her by Reese. I'm like, "What am I supposed to do? Like, if the baby's a yid, do I have to go back and do a toughest bris? If the baby's not a yid, then okay, then it was big machlokas. Rabbi Reese right first on this particular sugya. Rabbi Reese held the baby was a goy d'oraisa because he held that the mother had no nemanus because she's living as a notzris. He held, and he added, he said she could be your shikta for Amir La'akum on Shabbos when you have a heter. Hafla of a fella, couldn't believe it. That week I was at a wedding at a Terseyal. I sat down next to Rabbi first, and I just assumed that what Rabbi Reese said was across the board. I'm like, so I did this bris. Turned out the baby had no nemanus. She's like, why is there no nemanus? She's mesiach lefituma. She had nothing. She's totally trustworthy. So I'm like, hold on one second. But Rabbi Reese, I asked Rabbi Reese about Mesiach Levituma, and Rabbi, he said, no, Mesiach Levituma works, but it needs a birur in this case because she's so far off the derech. So Rabbi first in his inimitable, he goes, what does it say that? They need a birur. Where does it say that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where it says that. I don't know. I'm uncomfortable now. Also, does that kidney in Atofas down bris now, 2 hours away? Do I have to go drive back and make the kid bleed? So he said, the Gemara Paskins, that we hold that Mila Shalol Lishma is mutter. It's kosher b'diel. So either the baby is a goy d'oraisa mamish, or he's a yid mamish.
Like, you'd have to convert if he wanted to, mamish. That's
Rabbi Reese holds the baby is a goy d'oraisa.
I thought it was stop, it's do the mother. The mother's Jewish, the kid's Jewish.
But she has no ne'emanus to say she's a Jew.
But she knows her mother was.
Her speech is irrelevant. There's nothing she could say in halacha that matters.
as long as her mother doesn't walk in the door.
If there's a birur, then everything changes. If you go to the cemetery and you see her mother's mother has the Kohen hands on it,
Yeah,
what?
the kid really wanted to come from, you could investigate it, but at the moment.
Rabbi Reese was not having it. The baby was a goy d'oraisa. Okay, anyways, that was it's crazy.
How disagree, Sam?
Often. Last week also, 2 weeks also, they disagreed on a case. I did a bris where Rabbi Reese held you are not supposed to make the bracha on this particular scenario, and Rabbi First held you do make a bracha.
What'd you do?
This case was very complicated because I called Rabbi Reese to ask the shaila, and then he sent me to Rabbi First, who's a moel for the practical parts. And Rabbi First said to me, do X, Y, and Z and make a bracha. So then I went back to Rabbi Reese and said, Rabbi First said to do X, Y, and Z and make a bracha. He goes, I see why you're in a difficult situation. Yeah, I am. So he actually said you should follow Rabbi First and make a bracha, which I was very shocked by. Because he helped. I've seen them argue many times with bris shilas. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Yossi says in the Brisa. Ella, we don't need it to be lishma. So this kusi could do a bris in his whole entire life. Doesn't matter. It's totally mutter. Totally mutter. So now we see our stira in Rabbi Yehuda, that according to the non-flipping, the non-epoch version of our Mishnah, that means Rabbi Yehuda held that a kusi bris was okay. How can you say that? After all, the Brisa over here, 3 lines down, says that kusi that does a bris is not good because they're mal l'shem har grizim. So that's a stira. So says the Gemara, Ela la'olam epoch kede afchinan me'ikara. Really, we do flip the shitas. Rav Meir is now aligned perfectly, that he says an oved kochavim is never allowed. Uda kokasha Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda. When we now, because we solved for Rav Meir, we created a new problem for Rabbi Yehuda, which we saw in the bottom of Chavav and Beis. Don't worry, one of the Rabbi Yehudas is not who you think it is. Hahi Rabbi Yehuda Hanasihi, which is odd because we don't ever refer to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi as Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbeinu HaKadosh, we have names for him, not this. Titania, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Omer, Minayin Lemil Bove Kochavim Shipsula, Talmud Va'atas Brisi Sishmor. Okay, so now we have these different shitas within Rabbi Yehuda.
Nasi and Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya.
No, no, it's a different Rabbi Yehuda. No, one's Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and one's Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai is the Tana.
Rabbi Yehuda Mamish.
Rabbi Yehuda Mamish. Yeah. Again, it's difficult in the syntax. We never refer to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi as Rabbi Yehuda, but the Gemara obviously says we do.
So rarely have Rices quoted in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Right.
But that's more common because the Brisas were put together the generation after him, so he was really such a main player. So it's not that's not such a crazy thing. All right, then the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chizda, my time of Rav Yehuda. This is the Rav Yehuda of Har Grizim. My time of Rav Yehuda. Dechsiv, the pasuk says, La Hashem Himol. So that means that it has to be done La Hashem. It has to be done religiously. It has to be done by from a yid. For Rabbi Yossi, why does Rabbi Yossi say his very provocative line that Mal v'holech ad shetetzei nishmasa? Because Himol Yimol, or as some of the Rishonim explain, it's Hamol Yimol, the one who's circumcised, even if he's a goy, is allowed to do bris milah. What does Rabbi Yossi do with the pasuk that the person should be a yid? That pasuk was only talking about Pesach, not talking about the mitzvah bris milah, just the psul of being an arel if you wanted to eat the korban Pesach. Be'idach nami, what would Rab Chizda do with the pasuk himol yimol? That's dibur Torah klashim b'nei adam. It wasn't meant to darshan anything from it. And a third of the way down, itmar minayin lemila ba'oved kochavim shipsula. So how do we know that a milah that's performed by an oved kochavim doesn't count? Daru bar papa mishmei derav amar atas b'rsis ishmor, same as before. Rabbi Yochanan amar himol yimol. So now we see from the Tanaim now into the Amoraim, we have this tension as to whether or not a bris done by a goy is valid or not. My beinayu. What's the difference between the two shitas that we just saw of Daru bar Papa and Rabbi Yochanan? Let's review. Daru bar Papa says it should be a yid. V'atas brisi sishmor. Rabbi Yochanan says himol yimol. My beinayu. 3 possible answers. Aravi mahul, v'gavnuni mahul ika beinayu. An Arab or someone from Gavnun, if one of these people are already circumcised, Manda Amar Himol Yimol Ika, they're circumcised. You said they should be circumcised, they're circumcised. Manda Amar Brisi Sishmor, even though they're circumcised, but they're not a yid, so leka. So that would be a nafkamina. Says the Gemara, Will Manda Amar Himol Yimol Ika, just because they're circumcised, you can say that they're allowed to perform circumcision. I'll show you why that's not true. But Tanan, we have a Mishnah that we learned in Maseches Nedarim. Konam, a person accepts upon themselves a restriction. Konam shani nehene min ha'arelim. I'm not going to benefit from anyone who's an arel. Now, if we talk medically, an arel is someone who's uncircumcised, but that's not how the Gemara understands it. What's the din? Mutter be'arele Yisrael. Even though you made a konam, you're allowed to benefit from an uncircumcised Jew because he's a yid. What does it mean to be an arel? It means to be a guy. It doesn't mean to be uncircumcised. You're a guy. So the mutter ba'arele Yisrael v'aser be'mule ovdei kochav. Alma afal gav demehili. Even though the Aravi and even though the Gavnuni, that even though they're gemalt, but command lo mahili damo. So we see over here that you can't give this distinction of the Aravi and the Gavnuni because they're goyim. And when we say arelim, we mean a goy. Afal pi that they're gemalt. We don't care that they're gemalt. They're goyim. So that can't be the nafkamina between Daru bar Papa and Rav Yochanan. This happens, not now, but it happened back in the day where a woman had a bunch of boys, and the first many boys passed away after the bris. So then the halacha is that the future subsequent boys are not allowed to have a bris. So let's talk about that Jew who's uncircumcised. It says the Gemara, "Leman Amar Vesprisi Sishmor." He's a yid. He should be allowed to perform, even though he's a yid who's not gemalt. He should be allowed. He's frum. The Torah said not to get a bris. What he's supposed to do? Said it's pikuach nefashos. So then, if you want to say that he should be allowed to do a bris because he's a yid, ika laman damar himol yimoleka. But if you want to say that he doesn't have a foreskin, but he does, so that would be a nafkamina. Says the Gemara, that also is not a good nafkamina between Daru bar Papa and Rav Yochanan. Laman damar himol yimoleka. According to the shita of himol yimol, you're going to still say that it doesn't work for him. That's not correct, even though he is uncircumcised, but he's still a yid. But Tanan, we have another Mishnah. This Mishnah is also from Nadarim. Konam shani nehne mimulim. Let's say that a person says, I'm not going to benefit from people who are circumcised. Aser be'arele Yisrael. They're an arel, but because they're a Yisrael, we treat them as gemalt. So that nafkamina also doesn't work because a Jew is always considered a mahul, even if he's not mahul, because when we say, konam, that I'm not going to benefit from an arel, we don't mean foreskin. We mean goy. We don't mean a yid who has a foreskin. So Ella says the Gemara, Ika beinaihu isha. The nafkamina between Daru bar Papa and Rabbi Yochanan is whether or not a woman can perform a bris. Says the Gemara, Lemanda amar ve'atos brisisi shmur leka di isha la bas milahi. On the one hand, if you want to say she's like Abraham and she's a yid, it's true she's a yid, but she has no chiyuv in bris milah. So l'chora, even though she's Jewish, it would not work. With man damar himol yimo. This is fascinating. I don't know what this means. That if you want to say that the argument is that the person is circumcised, ika, to isha command mihiladamya. We treat her as though she is gemalt. That's a very, very interesting piece of Gemara. I don't know what the.
Not
What?
Isn't that all that it means?
No, the opposite. The Taras Brisi Sishmor we've been using as an equivalent to you're a yid. So that's why we had said in the previous nafkamina that didn't work out, that the man who couldn't have a bris but was a yid, we call him the Atas Brisi Sishmor, you're a yid.
Rashi says, Zara the low oved kochav. So by dismissing the oved kochavim, you include, obviously, the children after, which is this woman, or anyone.
By himol?
No, Brisi Tishma.
Yeah, but ulaman damar himol ika. We treat her as though she's circumcised. Isha command mihiladamya. What does that mean? A line ago, you said she wasn't shaykh to bris milah because she doesn't have the body part. Now you're saying she's begeder himol yimol. It says the Gemara. I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I'm just calling out the problems. Says the Gemara, Umi ika lamanda amar ishalo. Is there such a thing? Could anybody possibly say? And we're going to look in Chumash, right? What does the Torah say about Tzipora and Moshe? She took a flint stone, and she did her own son's bris. Says the Gemara, you're right. We read it kri, we read it vatikach, but it could be karbe vatakach. It was taken by me. She made someone take it. Mafil, right? She made someone take it. So not that she did it, but she called him out. She said, "Can you please go do my son's bris?" Vatichros reads, and she cut. That would be proper Hebrew. Says the Gemara, there's no evav, it's not a malay, it's a chaser, kari be vatachres, and she made sure that it was cut. She had somebody else do it. She started the process, and he finished the process. So according to the Gemara, he was busy. He was a busy guy. So what comes out of this Gemara? The Gemara says that yes, in fact, there are those who hold that a woman cannot perform a bris, and Sipora is not a good precedent. Anyways,
Anybody else she got, wouldn't, until Moshe finishing it, wouldn't that have been Roy?
huh?
If she got somebody else to do it, then that wouldn't have been a Jew. This was their show.
What if we pass him, sure.
Yeah,
It's
I
okay.
think the first shot is that she got somebody else to do it.
Right, who did she get already? What other Jew?
Right, that must have been.
Was Moshe a Jew?
Is anyone a Jew?
Well,
So that
No less than.
should be a raya that the Oved Kochav and Bris Shelo Lishma, isn't it? Just saying.
No less than.
It was no less, but no more. Or anybody else.
Would be preferable to have a Jewish woman do it than a guy.
Jew, he was slave.
It would be better if I had to pick between the two. It would be
Can't
great
you make
question. Is it better to have a Jewish woman or a non-Jewish man?
I mean, technically, she could make a bracha.
But until she. He doesn't have a non-Jewish man, but it's a significant machlokas about a woman.
Ve'eni sheksher lamud afal gav. The Rav Rabbi Yochanan halacha k'Rabbi Yochanan. Beha halacha k'Rav. The Brayso of Rabbi Nasi kaima kavase. Aval bahag pasak. Bal halachas gedolas holds the isha ksher lamud. Yes, it would be better to have a woman do it according to this. But thank God I'm not a posek. All right, let's go to the next Mishnah. There is a woman. I don't think she's from, but there is a woman who. Dr. Mohelet, I think her website is drmohelet.com. I'm pretty sure. I've never gone to the website. Relax, Cantor, relax. You already have a mole for your family. You're like, no. No, she doesn't do brisim on girls. You want your daughter to become a Mohelet. That's different. Okay. That's different.
Just for the story.
Just for the story.
Story.
Competition.
What happens if you have a female pediatrician who does a circumcision? Is it kosher?
Yeah. So first of all, there's another layer of this, which isn't discussed in this Gemara, that if a person's not a Jew who's not from, we treat their bris as though it's been done by a goy. So I deal with this a lot in the secular chevra. If you don't use me on day 8 because it's Shabbos, then you're going to use conservative Cantor X on day Shabbos.
Wow.
That
That
was fantastic, actually. I wish that was on purpose. So then the bris is not kosher because he was Mechal Shabbos, which inherently invalidates his capacity to do a bris. And not only did he not do a bris, he was Mechal Shabbos on the bris itself, and he's chayv skila. Whatever, it's bad. It's bad. So I always gently but clearly say, though, we always, whatever, I push them off. The question really would be, what do we do now? It's not ideal. It might not be kosher, but it might be kosher. So we would probably do hatafas on bris, just because we're unsure, but would never make a bracha. I've done brises of fathers and sons the same day. Son full bris, father hatafas on bris, because the father learned that his bris was not kosher. Okay, misrapin mehen ripui mamon. We're allowed to get healed by an akum, a ripui mamon. We don't know what this term means yet. Ava lo ripui nefashos. Ve'ein mistaprin mehen. We can't get haircuts from a goy. B'chol makom divrei Reb Meir. The chachamim omrim b'rshus harabim mutter. It's mutter to get a haircut from a goy if you're in a public space. Ava lo beino lebeino. This assumes that they have tools that can kill you. It's not. Yeah, their bare hands can kill. But I think the concern over here, yeah, right. If you go to there's some places that actually don't have razors. So it just depends where you're going. But I agree with Michael that scissors are very dangerous as well. If somebody has scissors, and they do, then that would probably not be okay. So the Shulchan Aruch quotes this halacha that you need to have a mirror in front of you when you get a haircut by a goy. My ripui mamon umay ripui nefashos. What does the Mishnah say when it allows us to be misrape for ripui mamon but not for nefashos? Ilem a ripui mamon means bischar that we're paying on ripui nefashos, which is not allowed as bechinam when we're not paying. That can't be. Because if that were to have been true, then listening, our Mishnah should have taught the following. It should have said, misrapin mehen bischar lo bechinam. We're allowed to get healed only when we pay, but not when we don't. Ella, perhaps answer number 2 is ripui mamon is davar she'ein bo sakana. That when I'm getting treated by them, it's ein bo sakana. They're dermatologists, they look at a thing on my skin, they say what it is. But ripui nefashos, davar she'esh bo sakana, they're my cardiologist, they're putting in a stent, they're doing real work, so then that can't be either. Because Amar of Yehuda, afilu rivda de kuslisa, even the blood draw of the blood letter is lo matsinan minaya. We're not allowed to have that from a goy either. So that's not davar sheyesh bo sakana. It's davar she'ein bo sakana, but it's still usher. So says the Gemara, ela ripui mamon is behemto. Ripui mamon, we allow a goy to work on us, quote unquote, not us really, but on that which is our mamon, such as our behema. They could work on our car. They could work on our machines. They could fix things for us. No problem. But ripui nefashos gufei, the guy is not allowed to work on me directly. That is not allowed. This aligns beautifully that ripui nefashos is gufei, and therefore you're not even allowed to have an oved kochavim do the puncture for bloodletting. Amar Rav Chiz Amar Marokva Aval Im Amar Lo. In contrast to what we just learned, Rav Chizda says in the name of Mar Ukva that if a goy, the akum says sam ploni yofelo, sam ploni ralo, use this medication, don't use that medication, mutter. There we are allowed to rely on a goy. Why? So says the Gemara, Savar shiuli mashilo. Obviously, Savar Rashi points out some of the details. Siule ha'oved Savar ha'oved kochavim, that shiuli kamashil ha'Yisrael, that the guy knows that the Jew is going to ask for a second opinion. And kihechi de mashilo mashil in shiachrina. So let's say that somebody says, yes, absolutely, you have a little dot on your skin, take 10 of these poison pills. So if that's what he does to the Jew, and then the Jew goes to another doctor and says, but I just spoke to Dr. Akum number 1, the one at 123 Main Street, he told me to take these poison pills. Ba'asahu gavra le'orui nafshe. If he says medication 1 is good for you, and then the Jew goes for a second opinion, and the other doctor says, what? Medication 1 is going to kill you. Who told you that? So that will then reveal that doctor number 1 was a bad doctor. So same principle as we saw in Amud ago, umano marium nase. So when he's giving your opinion, when he's giving his opinion, then we believe him. Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. That doesn't make sense. Rav and Rabbi Yochanan were not connected. Yeah, that makes more sense. Rava was 4th century. Rabbi Yochanan was like early 2nd, late 1st. So they really didn't, I don't believe they overlapped. And Rava was in Bavel, and I think Rabbi Yochanan was in Eretz Yisrael. Yeah. Yes, but he was only 1 generation later. That is true. Rabba was 1 generation later. Rabba bar bar Chana. That makes more sense. I have the taich on the side. I have both. Tzarech lomar Rabba, Gilion, Rishon v'kisveyad, Rabba bar bar Chana. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, so Amar Rabba bar bar Chana, Rabbi Yochanan, Amar lo Amar Chizam, Rabbi Yochanan, Safek Chai, Safek Meis. Let's say that a Jew is 50-50 if he's going to live past this doctor's appointment. Ein misrap and mehen. Don't go to the doctor who's an akum. Vaday Meis, if he's definitely going, so then misrap and mehen, maybe he'll get his life saved. I mean, he's going to say, what could be worse? How much worse could he make it? Says the Gemara, hold on 1 second, there should be an extra word here. Vaday Meis, so ikachayesha. If he's definitely dying, well, the goy could hasten the death of the yid. The akum could make him die faster. Says the Gemara, l'chayesha lo chayshina. We don't care about a couple of moments. That's pasha not true, because we've seen in Shas that we're very concerned about chayesha. We'll discuss this in a minute. How do we know that when it comes to chayesha that we're not concerned? Because the pasuk says in Melachim, Im amarnu navo ha'ir v'harav ba'ir v'masnu sham. This is talking about a case of 4 Mitzoraim who were outside the city. They were starving, and they said, better off we should just go into the hands of our enemies. Right? So that was that was them they were gonna die one way or the other. Maybe we'll get a few more minutes. Must be that l'chayisha lo chayishina, because they were allowed to, seeming that they didn't make the wrong choice. They went into that space. They went into that enemy's territory without knowing what was going to happen. Asks the Gemara, Meisve lo yisav yitin adam imaminim, vein misrapin mehen afilu l'chayisha. Even for chayisha, you shouldn't go to a guy. So even the one who's vaday meis shouldn't go, because even to save the chayisha, just die of natural causes. Just die at home. Why should you go to there? Maisa ben Dama, the son of Dama ben Achosa shel Rabbi Shmuel. This person was quoted earlier. He apparently was a Talmud of Yeshu HaNotzri. It says the Gemara, Sheikishu Nachash, the son of Dama ben Achosa shel Rabbi Shmuel, was bitten by a snake. Uva Yaakov ish kvar sakina l'raposo. Somebody came to him. V'lo hinicho Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel said, "You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to help." V'amar lei Rabbi Shmuel. V'amar lei Dama ben Achosos Rabbi Shmuel said to Rabbi Shmuel, Achi, hanach lo ve'arpe mimenu. Let my son get healed. Va'ani avi mikra min haTorah shehu muter, and I'll prove it to you. V'lo hispik ligmor sadavar ad shiyatas anishmas b'meis. So he tried to find a circumstance where he could bring a raya, and then he died. Kara lav Rabbi Shmuel ashrecha ben Dama she gufcha tar v'yatas anishmas b'tara. You died. Child died young. He ended up not following in his father's footsteps. And these are stark words to hear at the funeral. This is it's not PC, as we would say in our culture. He said it's better that you died that way. So there, what do we see? So there we see that we're not misrapin even l'chayisha. It says the Gemara, shiny minus. When we're talking about heretics, things are different. The mashcha, the evangelists draw you in. They don't draw us in because we're educated and we kind of know our red line. But it draws people in, and that's what we're concerned about. The asi lememshach basrai. We're afraid to get involved with heretics. They're smooth talking, got a sharp tongue. They know how to say just the right thing to just the right person to convince them. It's a money-making business to be an evangelist. Good. You know what? I actually had scheduled to stop right here. This is perfect. We'll stop at Omar Mar. Mir Hashem will pick up tomorrow night with a little bit more in this. Wishing you all a beautiful night.